They had the Spurs on there talking about how they implemented, OpenAI and ChatGPT there. They were like, yeah, we just implemented it and we didn't have any expectations of return. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, that's a luxury, right? I take the opposite approach. I look at it through the lens of kind of like two core areas. What are the KPIs that you need to hit over the next 12 months, right? And let's align the use cases with those KPIs. Or what are the problems like that you're experiencing right now that we could fix immediately and layer with top 1% principles with, integrated in AI to fix those.
Hi, my name is Dimitri Benici, and I'm a content creator, agency owner, and AI enthusiast. You're listening to the AI Agents Podcast, brought to you by Jotform, and featuring our very own CEO and founder, Ida Kintank. This is the show where artificial intelligence meets innovation, productivity, and the tools shaping the future of work. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of the AI Agents Podcast. In this episode, we are talking with Ryan Staley. How you doing, Ryan?
Awesome, man. Looking forward to being on the show.
Yes, we're very excited to have you as well. The connection here has been very cool to see between you and Jotform and what you've helped us out with. But we would love for everyone to learn a little bit about your background, what you're doing, and how this all came to be.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'll try and compress 27 years of business experience in like a minute.
Yeah, of course.
Because I hate it when I have guests on my podcast that they go on for like 15 minutes straight just on their background. So super long story short, I was in the go-to-market. I've been in the go-to-market space for, like I said, close to 27 years. Did the whole kind of stint in the individual contributor side from inside sales, where I started off, or I should say before that, going door to door to inside sales to mid-market to enterprise. And then also went to the leadership mode where I was in mid-market leadership, enterprise sales as well, and had multiple PE exits as well as helped build a company and that got sold to a publicly traded company. So, but one of the things that happened was I always was asked to basically build teams or create results with no infrastructure or no basically team in place or very little resources, right? But I had massive expectations on what needed to be done. So it aligns with kind of the bootstrap mentality, if you will, of just make it happen. And so in my last stint, basically grew an enterprise group from 0 to 30 million with only 5 people.
Wow.
Only 4 salespeople in 5 years. And so after that happened, I left and started consulting and helping companies implement those systems in their business. But about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, I had a guy named Chris Savage from Wistia, who's the CEO, on my podcast, which is called The Scale Up Show. Attikin's been on there. Just gave him some banger interviews. It's now called the AI Agent Show. And effectively, he's like, hey, Ryan, have you heard of this tool called Dolly? And I'm like, what the hell is Dolly? Right? This is right when it came out, V1. It was terrible, right? And I tried it with my daughter and we're like, this is okay. But the thing that was really impactful from that one event is I then got access to ChatGPT as soon as it came out. And what transformed what I thought was possible, specifically for go-to-market, was I tested it on things that took me 10 years to learn, and it got 90% of the way there in 3 questions.
Yeah.
And so once that was like a sledgehammer, hitting me between the eyes, I'm like, this is going to change everything. And I've been obsessed with that ever since. And as a result, help companies deploy at scale, integrating AI into their people to multiply the capacity, profit, and revenue without hiring.
Very cool. That was pretty succinct, actually. You did just exactly what you were hoping to. No, that's awesome. I'm very, very similar to you on the AI front, where I was introduced to it. It was an interesting experience, and then you have some sort of epiphany where you realize it does get a lot of the way there. And the nice thing about small business owners and bootstrapping is the goal usually is to get a lot of the way there, not necessarily to get as fully there as one could get with employees, but part of the way there. So I guess for you, when you're working with companies, what is the framework you kind of work in order to help them scale their teams? And I guess what's the first step in order to help somebody scale their teams just by implementing something as simple as a large language model in their workflows and workplace?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's kind of funny because like I'm part of OpenAI's like private invite only community, and
Ooh,
they had the Spurs on there talking about how they implemented OpenAI and ChatGPT there, which
sure.
the Spurs the professional basketball team, right?
Got it.
And it was
Hmm.
funny, like they were like, yeah, we just implemented it, and we didn't have any expectations of return, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm like like that's a luxury, right? That's like a business that's making so much money that are just like, yeah, we'll just try it out and see what happens. Where I take the opposite approach, I look at it through the lens of kind of like two core areas. Like I know what the patterns are from working with so many individuals and leaders, but the core areas that I have them focused on is either what are the KPIs that you need to hit over the next 3-12 months, right? And let's align the use cases with those KPIs, or what are the problems like that you're experiencing right now that we could fix immediately and layer with like top 1% principles with, integrated into AI to fix those. So that's really the core like framework that I use every single time. And if you take it through that mindset, there'll be an ROI generated because it's attached to achieving the enterprise outcomes that you need to do. So
Okay, cool. Ken?
Oh yeah, it's cool. Ryan, how are you doing? Yeah.
I'm doing awesome, man. It's good to see you again, as always, man. I love connecting with you,
Yeah,
man. So
yeah.
I'm really appreciative of being on the show.
And you have been helping Jotphone for a long time, our team, our sales team. So, and we have been meeting with you for a long time. And we also have like similar interests. You are also doing the AI Agents show. Now it's called AI Agents show. Previously it was the Scale Up show. And I was the guest.
Yeah,
That's how we met initially. Actually, that's how I met with
yeah,
Dimitri as well. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was in his show as well. So, and one of the things you do is like when you came to our, working with our team is like you gave them, training, help them in different aspects of our go-to-market efforts. And I'm really curious about like some examples, some case studies, user stories. Like obviously you don't have to give names. You should, you probably shouldn't. But like, what kind of things really help, like sales and marketing teams? What kind of things they do with AI to really get that, return on investment or more in their efforts? Like, what did you see so far? And you have been helping hundreds of companies, so you're actually seeing the results. So I'm really curious about that.
yeah. No, it's a great question, man. And like I have a broader depth of experience because I've been working with like companies that are as little as 10 million or 15 million all the way till like in the billions, right?
Wow.
So what I'm seeing is a pattern. Well, first of all, there's like if we're looking at go to market teams, I look at this through two lenses. There's very distinct unique use cases for leadership, executive leadership in those areas, and then the individual contributors as well.
Yep.
So I cut it up into those two different areas because there's certain things you need to do to lead with AI. And so there's a lot more strategic executive function capabilities you could leverage the PhD models for. And to give you examples, that could be like large scale data analyst or data analysis of looking at like, let's say your customers. And here I'll give you a real example for executives that I love. So if you look over, and this happens, and this is consistent with every single business I work with, is if you look at their client base, what you'll see from the deals won over the last 12 months or the last 36 months for LTV or lifetime value, if you look over the last 12 months, it'll be annual contract value. And a lot of times there's weird outliers that exist in the top 20% of clients that if you just double down on that, you are going to like quadruple your deal size without hiring anybody, without doing anything different, just by sheer focusing on that weird outlier. And so what you could do is you could use the data analysis tool in 4.0 to give you really good insights and patterns
Mm-hmm.
on who those people are and how to like niche down with that and refine your focus. So that is a strategy that Vista Equity uses to turn companies from 1 billion to 3 billion. I use that manually when I was a rep and as a go to market. And so that'll double your deal size or quadruple your deal size, but also at the same time shorten the sales process. So that's one of the use cases I love for executives. And then I have more if you want me to on the executive side, and then I can get in the IC side. But I'll take a breath in case you have any follow-up questions on that.
Dimitri?
No, I think that's interesting. I resonate with your point on the difference in how AI can help an individual in just your everyday workplace position versus like a company operator versus like someone in the higher level of positions. When you're working with companies, what do you find is the hardest spot for buy-in to occur? Right, because obviously it's going to take it could be immediately bought in by people in the higher ups, but what do you find is the most difficult part of getting buy-in at a company for actual implementation? Is it implementation of it, or because a lot of people conceptually will be fine with it, but implementation I'm sure could be an interesting factor in there too.
It's interesting. So I think so the process I usually do is like I'll analyze those problems, and then I'll do a combination of training and hackathons to implement it.
Sure. Okay.
But then also like really synthesize the people that are using the tools and providing use cases and really promote the success that they're doing. So I think sometimes like there's still the misnomer of executives where they're like, hey, I can just delegate this to my team and do it. Right? Like that's one of the biggest gaps, because like you need to lead by example as an executive, like on how to use it and what you're using it for, because it's so different than any other SaaS tool where it's not just a linear output that it provides.
Yes.
And at the same time, like you have access to basically something that costs $1 million a day to operate, and for $20 a month or $30 a month or even free. And so I think one of the big things is leaders they think they don't know how to use it for email, or they play around with it. So they've checked that box where they're only scratching the surface and are behind 99% of people if they take that approach. So that's what I would say is the biggest kind of gap that people run into with implementation.
Is there any concerns usually in these companies that the outputs that they're going to have when using the tool are not as good as somebody who is, in like an entry level position or otherwise? Because I feel like that's some part of the buy-in.
It's a good question, man. Because so I survey my customers when I bring them on, and that is the number one consistent pattern that I've seen of people not getting good outputs. And so that's one of the things I hit on the first session is like how to get top 1% outputs so that like the results you get are amazing. Because once you do that, that unlocks a whole different part of someone's brain of what's possible. And that's what really gets things flowing. I would say that's one. And number two is I find out within a week or two how I could save someone 5 to 10 hours a week through using the tool. And that's the other thing that opens up, their interest and coachability is what I would say. So those two areas.
Interesting. I've noticed that with people in the general, talkosphere that is not and enthralled with AI, they tend to have the intrigue, and then they're not really great at prompt engineering, or they don't put a lot of time into it. So then they'll think that, the performance is worse than that of like a basic level employee. So that's why I always ask that question. I find it this like weird juxtaposition where they're like, oh, this could be saving me a lot of time, but then they try it for a little bit. They don't necessarily put in the best of inputs, and then the outputs aren't good, and then they try to blame it on the AI more than the actual performance that it can have. It's more so your prompt engineering, which is bad, is kind of what I've noticed a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's true, man.
I got the next question. Yeah, I actually wrote a book about automation, automate your busy work, and in the book that I talk about how to use automation, and what I encountered is like when I talk to people about automation is like the biggest problem is like taking that first step. Like it's just like people are already busy, like they're already busy, like we don't have time to improve things, we don't have time to automate things. Like that's the biggest struggle. And so someone thinking about using, like a company thinking about using AI for their sales and marketing, where do you think they should take the first step? Like what should be their first step? Like so that they can get some they can give it a start and build some momentum, like where would be like the low hanging fruit for them to get results?
Yeah. So I take the atomic habits approach to this, and this is like the simplest way. And basically, one of the things they talk about in the book Atomic Habits, written by James Clear, is basically like attach it to something you already do every day, right? And start to formulate a habit like that. So the easiest way to do that is think about how much on average the average person uses Google a day, right? Like pretty much everybody uses it every day at some point. So instead of spending your half hour a day on Google, spend 15 minutes on ChatGPT when you do it.
Sure.
Try ChatGPT first, try it on there. Or I actually like Perplexity better than ChatGPT for search. I showed my mother, who was 75 years old, on how to use it. And she's like, this is so much easier than Google, right? And that's a 75-year-old woman who's loved by mom, amazing, but not the most technically savvy person.
Sure.
And so if a 75-year-old grandma can learn how to use an AI tool like that, after when I had lunch with her, I showed her how to use it. That's it, right? Like then anybody else could do that. So if you just replace it, you'll find your life getting better and better, and then that'll get the momentum going.
Wow.
I mean,
okay.
I found the voice modes really helpful in the start. Like, both for my kids, like, they're in elementary school, and for my like father and mother, like it's really hard to get them to use technology. But once I gave them the ChatGPT voice mode into their hands, like they were so like it was so easy for them to use it. And my kids are using it to do their homework, to do their research. My father is using it to ask different questions and learn about different things. So it kind of replaces, searching Google for them. And it like the voice mode seems to be really promising in this area. Yeah, go ahead, Dimitri.
Yeah, no, that, absolutely.
I got to show my mom how to do that too.
Yeah, cool.
I guess I got to get on the train of attempting to get the elderly people or the people that are more senior than I in my life to use it. I haven't got on that train yet, but I guess I need to. I was thinking the whole Perplexity thing does introduce an interesting wrinkle into the mix when you're probably working with companies. Is it through partnerships that you default to ChatGPT? Or is there anything else? Have you ever implemented anything else at a company? And is there any reason?
Yeah, I've implemented Copilot. I'll make recommendations to tools like Jotform, right? Like, I really look at I don't look at everything as a nail and ChatGPT as the hammer, right? I really look at the use cases. And so, it's kind of a combination of things, man. I would say usually ChatGPT is the farthest ahead of everybody. In terms of releases in advancements, and we could talk about deep research on that. And then other people are catching up constantly. So that's usually the best default. I don't get paid by them. I don't have any affiliate fees or anything.
Sure. Yeah.
I also personally like Claude. I like Perplexity for search. There's some really crazy agentic use cases we could talk about with Perplexity that not a lot of people talk about, as well as deep research. And then, I even this one's wild, but Atikin knows, we've had conversations. I'm a go-to-market first person and spend a ton of time in large language models. I'm not a programmer. I'm not an AI engineer. I was creating some stuff on Lovable that blew my mind. Lovable has grown from 0 to 10 million in 3 months. And that's agentic building. I've used Replit as well. But those are some examples. So it's really use case dependent is what I would say. But by default, usually ChatGPT is the kind of catch-all because of the PhD models it has, in my opinion. For example,
I think you have something that you call the AI model metrics. Can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, man. So the AI model matrix, I just made a YouTube video about this because it was one of the things that came up so many times when working with clients. So how do I know what model to use when, right?
Good question.
Maybe what I'll do is I don't know, maybe I'll share it. Maybe I could share a link in the chat or something of it. I haven't made it publicly available, but if people are interested, maybe I could do something like that. But basically what it is it just breaks down every single model that's available in ChatGPT right now, with like the specialty use cases of what it's good for, what it's not good for, and then actual real use cases to use it. So it ranges from 4.0 all the way down to deep research, and then even 4.5, which is the emotional intelligence model that they released in research preview recently as well.
Can you share some examples from there? Like what type of tasks are more suitable for what kind of models? Like I think in that matrix you have like all these different models and you have like different use cases, examples like that. If you can share some examples, like that would be, I think, really cool.
Do you want me to pull it up? I know you guys do stuff on.
We do screen grabs on here, so we're more than happy to have you pull it up. Yep.
Okay. Hey, let me pull it up real quick. I will. But what I could talk while I'm doing that, I mean, I know this stuff, it's hardcore embedded in me. So if you look at 4.0, I kind of look at 4.0 as like the Swiss Army knife. So you're going to use that for the bulk of what you need in terms of tools. I think it's really good. Like the GPT that OpenAI made, data analyst is really good for analyzing data. And there's a lot of things built into there.
Sure.
That I think are really impressive. So I think like for the bulk of what you want to use it for, that's really good for search. I think if we start to progress and we want to get to more, and there's a lot of text on the screen that I'm about to show you. So that's why I kind of had to make it into a matrix. So why don't I share this right now? Let me share my screen. Actually, hold on a second. It's bigger. So hopefully everyone can see it. And then if we shift to like, let's say the PhD models. So the PhD models are more along the lines of O1, O3 mini, and O3 mini high. Let me make this bigger so folks that are looking on YouTube can see a better example of this. And that way we don't need, there we go. That's probably better. So like what I would say for like O1 and O3 is like, if you look at O1 and O3, these are like the Albert Einstein models. So O3 mini high is the best at like deep strategic thinking. So think of that as like you could use 4.0, and this is what's called model stacking, to analyze data in like an Excel file, get the output or the high level understanding of it and summary of insights. And then you could put it in O3 mini high. You could paste those in there, put them in O3 mini high, and turn it from insights to strategy down to tactical execution. And so that's one of the things that I like to do is stack the models from there. If we look at 4.5, this is the one that's only on limited research. And basically what 4.5 is it's the highest emotional intelligence model so far. There's mixed reviews on it.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Yeah. So what I mean by so based on the way it's trained, it's supposed to have the best understanding of like how people feel and the emotions behind writing and logic and decision making. O3 and O1 are more logic and STEM heavy models, so science and math. And think of this as more like tapping into how people really feel so that they can write deep, rich, emotional content. Now, here's the thing I'm going to tell you about that's really important for every single person listening right now. This is like a writer downer. 4.5, what's happening with that is effectively when we jump from the normal models to 4.5, there's a 10x improvement in emotional intelligence with the way this model operates. Now, it's still buggy right now, so it's not perfect, but GPT 5.0 is supposed to be released in the next 2.5 months. And there's supposed to be another 10x leap from the core models that we have now to 5. So 2 10x leaps equals 100x improvement in that. And that's going to basically have the ability to replace a lot of folks that have high emotional quotient, like sales or other areas that's involved due to what these models are going to have in GPT-5. And nobody's really thinking about it.
That's big.
And then last but not least, definitely is deep research. So we could riff on some use cases, but some things that companies have used it for that I've worked with are like service addressable market. So like if they're trying to look at a vertical or a market segment that they're in, what's available in there, what are the gaps, what are the opportunities, does a really good job at that. Another example that someone used it is they wanted to move up market. And so they were trying to get really good with messaging and understanding of the different verticals. So it did a really deep research report on that. And then one of my absolute favorites is with that model. I used it for my own business, and I'm like, hey, like there's basically you get 120 deep research uses a month for the pro user, which is a $200 a month user.
Mm-hmm.
I have access to that. If you have the normal version like Teams or Plus, you only have 10 uses a month. So I said, okay, I have 120 uses of deep research per month. How should I use these for my business to grow my business, to multiply my clients and do that, right? And it gave me 120 ideas.
Nice.
All categorized. And I went through that, man, and I've started to like tactically pick on different ones, and some of them are really freaking good. So it ranges all the way from market research, competitive research, messaging, prospecting, all those kind of different areas.
Now we only need the deep work model, which will actually do all those things for us.
Yeah. It'll be based off Cal Newport's wonderful book. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
that'd be funny.
Exactly.
I guess my follow-up question to that would be, talking about deep research. I have used ChatGPT's deep research. I think it's awesome. There is a lot of great stuff I'm seeing when I try it out. I do have the team plan, so I only have so many uses per month, but I try to be as effective as I can with them. However, there are other tools that have deep research now. I believe it's Perplexity. I believe it's also not only Perplexity, but Gemini as well. Didn't they just release something on that realm? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on those other models and how their deep research is and how they compare?
Yeah, so there's Gemini, Perplexity, Grok, and Claude just released it as well.
Oh, okay.
So here's what I've noticed. Like, I think I've tested all of them. And because I look at this, like I said, I have no alliance to any model. I like to just use what works best. That's why I use a bunch of different models, right? But I'm working on something for that because I think that's an opportunity. But what I would say is one of the things here, let me give you an example, instead of just being negative.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the opposite side where I'm going to be like a classic YouTuber's this is amazing. This is the best thing that's ever happened, right? But I'll give you a good use case in Perplexity that I've never heard anyone else talk about. And so this might be valuable. So within Perplexity, you could go in there and basically click on the mode that you want. Maybe I'll pull this up and I'll show this as well. But one of the cool things about Perplexity is you could use DeepSeek as an example, as one of the models. I have the Pro model, which is basically the $20 a month version. So let me share this again and I'll show you because not a lot of people know this. And this might be a huge level up. Okay. All right. Okay. So if we click on here, one of the things is you could use the different reasoning models. So this is kind of and this is what I noticed. One of the interesting things about Perplexity is they test OpenAI's advanced models before the public, because I've seen that. But basically there's Pro, there's reasoning, and then there's deep research. For Perplexity deep research, I was not impressed. It kept timing out. It wouldn't complete the job. But this basically has the reasoning model is effectively like deep research, and I could use any of the models here. So that's something that's really cool. The part that I've heard anybody talk about is this button, right? So you could set the sources for search. So you could look at social, academic, or web. It's defaulted to web. Now, here's where it gets really cool. If I were to do this, let's say for only academic, I could type in here and say, okay, identify the top 10 papers on, let's say, LLM prompting for agentic use case optimization. I'm just making this up on the fly, right? But what it's going to do is it's only going to look at research papers versus pulling everything it can off the web. And so there's a different level of quality you're going to get from that in terms of doing it. And as you can see, even though it's not deep research, it's mimicking that and it's going through the kind of chain of thought with it. And what you're going to see is it works pretty good and pretty fast. So this is what I would say is an example of how you could use it. And it didn't pull up 10 papers, ironically, but it's because it says there's only one paper on this, which is really interesting. So this might be, and then it gives you a link to the research paper as well. So just a little bit of a different way that you could use it. And then at the same time, like if you're trying to get sentiment off of like what your buyers are doing, you could put that and put social media and have only responses from Reddit. So like, for example, like if we're looking at doing research for JotForm, I could say, okay, what are all the agents for customer support that would be needed specifically for nonprofits or specifically for education institutions that are talked about in Reddit, and then give me examples of what forums they are. So it's really good for things like that as well.
Okay. So here's the things that I'm noticing. Every product seems to have a unique wrinkle somewhere lying within it, you know? However, there's a lot of different services that you'd end up needing to purchase, which I have no problem with. I mean, we run a podcast about AI. I have a content agency. It just makes sense. What is your elevator pitch to the average person in a company, small business or otherwise, for why you'd want to invest in not only one tool, but multiple tools? Because I personally can see the value in having and spending 40, 60, 100, whatever it is a month on AI and automation. But what's your elevator pitch for that?
Yeah, I mean, at its simplest, like I think you pick one large language model,
okay,
standardize on it for your company, and then you could stack the other ones for niche use cases, right? So the cool thing about Perplexity is it's free. Like you don't even need to pay for it. And it's research in real-time research is like massively good for time savings alone. So like even if you just had like ChatGPT, Gemini's finally catching up. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting better from Google. Like they're making huge advancements. And Claude's really good too. Like, so the cool thing is now is like, unless you're a super ridiculous power user like me and have to provide like always be ahead of the curve for your clients, you don't necessarily need to have the exact power up for every single one of these.
Sure.
It's going to be more use case dependent, right? So I think here's what I say, my 2 cents, standardize on a platform, have your team work together, collaborate and share. And then for those niche outlier use cases, you might have people or departments that have multiple licenses, right? That's probably the best way to do it.
Okay, cool. And the next question I have in this sequence would be, you know, we're talking about using AI in real time, right? We're talking about using AI in what I guess I would think of as version 1 of how you could probably interact with AI. And in my perspective, there's like kind of 3 tiers you can work at it with. There's just chat, you know, using it in the day-to-day interacting with the computer. There's number 2, which is making automation sequences. And then there's number 3, which is agentic uses that are also autonomous. So how do you at a company, and have you worked in companies where you've helped them implement automation workflows, and like how do you get them to take the step from just the normal day-to-day chat interaction and also use it for what, in my perspective, is actually even more practical, more effective, more time saving, which is like automation stuff on top of just interacting with the chat?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I think here's what I would say. This surprises me. A lot of companies don't even understand how to use the basic chat.
That's, yeah.
Like we're talking companies with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, no freaking clue. There's no standardized approach for their employees. So they'll be selling AI products, but they have no AI strategy for their team, and there's been no training for their team. And so that's problematic because then people operate in the shadows and they won't share their innovations organizationally. And that's one of the biggest things. Like you could be sitting on a gold mine of innovation, but if you don't put that training out in the public, then that's not going to happen. So I think that's the activation point. And once they realize, the employee realizes it's encouraged, the employer's behind them, then the floodgates open of opportunities. So that's going to give you your best automation use cases. However, I would say there's a big difference of automation between enterprise companies or small and medium businesses. And small and medium business, I mean, 50 people or less, right? Big difference. But I think it's a natural progression because what happens is once people are activated, they understand the use case, the benefit, they're like, all right, cool. Next step is like, how can we connect these to a couple different systems, right? So it's a natural like next step that they have because they don't want the constant clicking, right? Or they don't want to copy and paste in a lot of different fields. So that leads to more the automation component. The only thing I would say too with automation and agentic is it's still limited in scope right now. And what I mean is like you can't just say like I want you to create an outbound campaign and generate 1,000 leads for me.
No.
Like it's not there. So you got to be very specific and have agents that are defined for narrow tasks. And if you do that, give them the right training data, then they could be really, really good at execution. Because like it doesn't matter if you could automate everything at scale if you're just automating shitty processes. You know what I mean? You're just automating slop, and that creates more problems than good. So that's my 2 cents.
When you're automating, it's you prefer. Do you prefer just taking something that they already do and then like start using AI for various parts of it and just doing the same thing but with the help of AI and maybe scaling it with the help of AI? Or do you prefer like starting from scratch? Hey, let's just start from scratch and let's build this new automation. Like, which one do you prefer when you're working with companies?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, most of like the automation stuff, like it's just like normal automation with like some AI reasoning on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not like, so like, I think that's where a lot of people misunderstand it, and then like, if we're talking about agents, like I've seen a lot of people try, I've tested a massive amount of tools and a lot of it's not that good. Like I could say like, I could put in a prompt and it's better than the output where it's got like 17 agents talking to each other and doing everything. Right. So like, I would say like simplicity over complexity is going to like help you nail execution. And, but here's what I would say. There's companies like Jotform that are like starting to democratize what is available with agents and make it really easy for people to do that. And as the technology gets better and better, then that nirvana of like using deep research is going to be available across a magnitude of different use cases. And then that's going to explode. So that's my 2 cents on that.
What do you think about the future? Obviously the AI agents, they do work, but it's not like, like you have to really spend a lot of time on them to fix them and get them to a point where they are, useful. And you can actually make them useful, but it's actually requires a lot of effort and, skills as well. But when you look at like 5 or 10-year horizon, like where do you see us and the companies? Like, what do you think is going to happen in the future with AI agents and in terms of sales and marketing, especially?
So let's say I'm just looking at my date. So it's March of 2025 right now. So let's take 5 years because I think if we look at 10 years, people's heads are going to explode, right?
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
So if we look at 5, I mean, this is crazy, man. So, and it's a great question, Anakin. And it's like, I started thinking about this a lot over the weekend. I watched the movie Electric State. Did you guys ever watch that or see that? It just came out. It's gotten a lot of like, it's with Chris Pratt and, was it Millie Bobby Brown?
Okay. From Stranger Things.
Stranger Things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
So it didn't get great reviews. I thought it was entertaining. It kind of reminded me of Ready Player One, where there's like an alternate reality that happened in the 90s because robots basically took over and there's this whole big thing, right? So it was kind of funny because it was like stuck in the 90s, right? So that got me thinking, and I started asking deep research like, all right, I think we're going to hit artificial general intelligence in the next couple of years, which is basically where AI could do all the tasks that humans could do at the same or higher level. And the chief product officer of like OpenAI thinks that could be hit by the end of 26, I think, or 26. Dario Amodei from Anthropic said 27. So like that's going to massively change everything. And so my take is like, there's nothing that's happened faster in our life from a technology change than what's happening now. We're at Moore's law times 3. And so I guess like the biggest thing is like, there's going to be so many industries that are reinvented, so many jobs that are reinvented. And there's going to be like, I don't know, man, like I ran out 20 different scenarios that deep research came, and it went from like a surveillance government, like run state, all the way towards more the utopia model. It's probably going to be somewhere in between, but I think government regulation is going to be one of the top priorities. And the reason being is because there's an arms race between the US and China right now.
Yep.
Because there's a security issue where if someone's AI is so good, they could literally attack the entire infrastructure of another company, like a nuclear bomb, and destroy it. And so there's a lot riding on this. And so long story short, if we're looking at life, I think it's going to be unrecognizable. It's going to be the difference between today and like what happened in the 1500s, probably 3-4 years from now, which is crazy. And then government is going to have a big role in it. And at the same time, I do think there's going to be a lot of upside too, because we're at the largest unengagement rate of work in 10 years.
Really?
And people are ready for a change. And I think this will give us an opportunity to make some areas of work really fun and really interesting and exciting as well.
That's great.
Yeah. That's a good, yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot, especially with the stuff on the, the state level or country level side of things and what's working behind the scenes there that we're not all privy to, but we probably should assume is going on. I was thinking about it though, when you're talking about this, it's baffling to me where we'll be in 5 to 10 years, especially with the workplace. I was talking with a buddy of mine about agentic AI the other day, even just the concept of training an AI on a knowledge base, a persona, these types of things that your average person isn't familiar with. Hyper-focused use cases can be really, really well produced now. What are your thoughts on where this will kind of impact the entry-level positions at a lot of knowledge work companies? Because I have a feeling that AI agents are going to take over a lot of those roles within the next 5 years. In some respect, I don't know whether the roles will be gone or whether a lot of work will be just offloaded from them. What are your thoughts on that?
That's definitely a possibility. The unique thing though, and I didn't start thinking about this until Attican mentioned, his kids were using it for voice and his parents. I love that.
Yeah.
I got to start using that for my parents as well, because, typing is hard.
Sure.
You would think I have fingers that are 10 times the size because of how much I fat finger stuff on the keyboard. I suck at typing, right? But so I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
The question is the question is in the future of the workplace, do you feel like this AI agent stuff will associates?
I'm back.
Mm-hmm.
You got me back,
Yep,
Dimitri.
no
I'm back, man. Okay. So the future of the workplace. So basically, this is the first time ever that we're talking about where it could create the future of the workplace. The thing that nobody's really factoring in is we have kids in high school that might be more adept at using AI than people in the workforce right now.
That's fair.
And I don't think anybody's really thinking about that. So you're the entry level jobs are going to go away. Yeah, I think the entry level jobs as today are going to go away. But if you have kids that are have been crushing it with using AI for their whole life, and you have some folks that have a ton of experience but they're going to get clowned by these kids. And it's something I never really thought about until we're talking about right now, because they are going to operate a superhuman level at 10 times the speed that some people that have way more experience demand. So there could be big opportunities for them to jump faster and further in the workforce as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
We all have to retire then.
This is... I don't know how well familiar with there's a piece of work from I think the 1920s by Bertrand Russell. It's called In Praise of Idleness. It's kind of a philosophical paper. He posited a point. It was post World War I, and he came to the epiphany that essentially the entirety of Europe, so modern world, as he put it, essentially had half of its workforce arbitrarily blowing each other up for 6 years, and then they just went right back to work. And he's like, wait a second, and the economy was fine. He then posited the point that work in the next few years, and he was way off, obviously, has to essentially change. There is going to be an adjustment with the advent of more, he actually used the word automation, but from the industrial terms, right? So he was saying automation, he was saying factories, these types of things. He was saying work has to change from a frequency standpoint. Now, it's hilarious because, as we know in American culture, that did not happen. We just kept working. Same with a lot of the world. Maybe in Europe a little bit less. France is down to, I think, like a 30-hour work week or something like that at this point, which in America, that's not the vibe at all that I'm getting of what's to change. But do you think that practically, with what Bertrand said actually 100 years ago at this point, with the advent of AI, we actually might start seeing the first real regression in a culture change in work? Because we've had probably the ability to slow down a little bit. We just, as a country, we just choose to not, because growth or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, man. It's something to think through. It's like, unless it's, and let me put it this way. I think if people would definitely take that route. Like, you saw that with work from home. That's why a lot of companies want people to stop working from home.
Yeah, hey, you're right on that. Yep.
Working 20 hours a week or whatever. So I think on the employee side, they would love that. I think on the owner side, they would not love that, because they look at that as unused capacity from people. And however, if people understand that they can get replaced if they don't modify how they're working, then that might change the mindset a little bit. And I've seen people that work hard too, but yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good question. I think eventually the technology will get so good that that'll be a requirement, because there'll be a lot less work to do. At least for the majority. There's still going to be hard charging companies that have massive expectations.
Of course. Always.
But I think it could create it's just like how the work from home created a new paradigm of how everyone works. I think this will do the same thing, but just in a different way.
Yeah, we'll see. If you're familiar with the, it's a trend where people essentially secretly have multiple jobs. I'm forgetting the name of the
quiet quitting.
No, not quiet quitting. It's the overemployed. Have you heard the overemployed movement?
Yeah, I've heard of people doing that.
People are going to start doing the AI agent overemployed.
Yeah, you're going to see it, man. I mean, it's going to get wild, and we got to be careful. Because at the end of the day, I think it's good to have integrity with what you're doing.
100%.
Say what you do and do what you say. And, if people operate that way, sometimes it's going to make sense depending on what your job is and your commitments are. But at the same time, sometimes it's it's not the way that I would want to be treated.
No.
So that's going to catch up with people, I think, if they do that. But it's something that's definitely be out there. So
something to think about. It was just some food for thoughts stuff before we close things out. We only have a couple minutes, but the last question I do have for you, actually, in this realm, is more so in regards to AI that has the ability to do stuff for you in more than just a chat ecosystem or an automation ecosystem. I'm curious what your thoughts are on these new operator and computer-based tools. I know we just did an episode on Manus, which was very intriguing. I was mainly baffled by the speed at which it operated. What are your thoughts on that? And have you seen anybody implement it in an interesting way so far? I know that one's in beta, but operator probably more so.
I love the potential. I haven't used Manus. I think one of the flaws that folks have talked about with Manus is it can't use any sign-ins, right? So you can't sign in your Google Sheets and create that. It can't sign in your LinkedIn account. It can't. It supposedly gives you access where they don't see that. You never know with that stuff, right? Whether or not they're monitoring that in the same window. I tried it with Operator. I tried it with Convergence. I did a episode on that, and I was really impressed with, I think it's Convergence. It's a UK company that basically is doing what Operator is supposed to do, but it kept crashing, right?
Yep.
And it worked really slow. However, you use deep research and it'll do the same thing without you having to monitor and check it. So like I spent hours using an operator trying to get one task done. So here's my point. My long story short of this, just like I gave with my 27 years of career in 2 minutes, is I think I'm really excited about it. I love the concept of what Manus did, where they connected Claude 3.7 to 27 different tools to operate at a different level. I think that's amazing innovation. I just think it's like the early days when we're using 3.5 or 4, where you'd have to prompt like an absolute genius to get a good result. And I think that's kind of where we're at with some of this operator computer use stuff right now. However, by the end of this year, I see it being completely different because people are going to double down, triple down because they see the utility in it, and it's going to change things massively.
Very cool. Vatican, anything last from you?
Yeah, the last question is, where can our audience find you? Like how to find your podcast and your website, and how can they reach you?
Yeah, man. So you could, my website is ryanstaley.io. I think like the best way to get connected to me is on LinkedIn. Send me a DM message there. I publish AI content every day, my journey, what I'm seeing work well, not work, as well as the latest. And then, if you like content like this, my podcast and YouTube, where I show actually explainers on this, is my YouTube channel, which is Ryan Staley. So that's pretty much it, man. LinkedIn, DM me, mention you saw me on the show. YouTube, if you want to watch some great content, I would love to hear from you, especially if you want to implement this at your company and transform your entire team in less than 2 months. So
that's awesome. It's funny. It's when Aidikin asked the last question, have you seen iRobot?
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yeah.
I thought, so for one, both of us apparently are from the Chicagoland area, and that movie takes place in Chicago. And I was going to say to Aidikin, oh, that's the right question to ask at the end of it. And if you recall, the scientist always tells Will Smith when he's in the hologram, that is the right question. I love that movie. I watched. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this one. This was a fun one. Please check out all of Ryan's stuff. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of the different platforms that you're watching. Follow us for more. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.